Alguém consegue monitorar?
Estou monitorando aqui, Luiz.
O YouTube? Legal.
Depois que passar esse início, eu posso ficar também monitorando. Só para ver se por acaso...
Isso.
Bem, né?
A gente vai revezando.
Muito bem. It's so quiet.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Oi.
Olá.
Olá.
Okay. Should we start? Should we wait a couple more minutes?
We can start, right? Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to our Right to Leave Abortion Prevention Workshop here with FSN. So our workshop today is, as it said, the right to leave, conversation about abortion and abortion prevention. So we'll be here from 3 to 5 p.m. here in Calgary. And our agenda for today, oh, sorry, let's have to see the next page. Oh. So our agenda for today is we do have a reading that will happen soon, our initial prayer, and then we have a question of the Spirit's book. Then we have the 3 presentations, abortion, what does Spiritism and the Law of Reincarnation say about it? Abortion, what does Spiritism and the Law of Cause-Effect say about it? And abortion, what does Spiritism and the Law of Mercy say about it? Then we'll have our final prayer. So after each presentation, we'll have some time to talk, or people can just, that's what we decided, right? So we'll have, after all the presentations, we'll have some time to talk about that specific presentation. And of course, we're always welcome to talk and we just can have to monitor the time a little bit. So, but feel all welcome to, it's a conversation more than a lecture. So that's the idea to be. Okay. So for our reading, just gonna move the people to the side. This is from the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. Now there was a Pharisee, a man named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God. For no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him." Jesus replied, "Very truly I tell you, No one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again. How can someone be born when they are old? Nicodemus asked. Surely they cannot enter a second time into their mother's womb to be born. Jesus answered, very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless they are born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised at my saying, you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sounds, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. So very well, we now invite you to close your eyes for our initial prayer. And in this prayer, let's connect to dear God, to Jesus, to our guardian angels, and to all the good spirits there are participating with us in this workshop. Dear God, our Father, dear Jesus, our beloved brother, we are blessed to be here today, united in prayer. We are grateful for your loving and unconditional love and support in our daily lives throughout our journey. We ask you that you bless this workshop today, that our conversations bring us reflections, understanding, comfort, and strength. We ask you, dear God, for all the brothers and sisters that are thinking about abortion so they can have their hearts touched. We also ask and pray for the ones who had their lives interrupted before being born so they can find comfort, consolation, and they remember that they will have more chances, other opportunities to reincarnate. May they receive all of our love, feel comforted, feel understood, and if when they can also find forgiveness in their hearts. We also ask, dear God, for the ones who had already committed this act, that they can also find comfort. They can find within their hearts the understanding about what they did and its consequences. That they can find also the comfort, the knowledge that they can do the reparation so needed. We ask, dear God, and also bless all the presenters so they can communicate and be good instruments during this afternoon that we are together. May our workshop be all blessed by your unconditional love and support. So be it.
So be it.
Very well. So just before we go to the presentation, we just like to bring up one question from the Spirit's book. It's a question 880. It is in the third part that talks about the moral laws. And this question is in the chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken. And it talks to us about the law of justice, love, and charity. So that is the first question of that chapter. No, I'm not sure if it's the first question, but anyways. So it does say, which is the first of all the natural rights of humans? And so it's a very broad question, but the answer is very simple. So the first of all the natural rights of humans is the right to live. That is why no one has the right to assault a fellow human being's life or to do anything that may compromise his or her corporeal existence. So when we talk about assault of a fellow human being's life, means killing someone or attempting to kill someone or threaten the person's life. So it's a very simple question with a simple answer, but it can also be so, we could talk for hours about what means the right to live. So the idea of this workshop is not to judge anyone, it's not to blame anyone, not shame anyone, but to bring awareness and to bring to us what the Spiritism, the doctrine of spirits, say about life and about abortion and about the right to live and its consequences. So I hope you all feel welcomed. And again, we are here to share and not feel judged. And I know this will be recorded and will be here for whoever wants to watch later. So sometimes when we start reading or listening to things and they touch our lives so much, just remember there's no judgment. We just want to bring awareness, and God is a loving God. Okay, thank you very much. So now for Sonia, I believe. I will just stop sharing my.
I guess it's actually it's Victor.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You're on mute.
Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So as Anna brought to us, we'll start today. The first of the three talks will be around Spiritism and the Law of Reincarnation and what do they talk about abortion. And so we'll start with what Spiritism says. And it'll be a series of questions from the Spirit's book. And they're very detailed. And they revolve around the main question that we usually get around abortion, which is when life begins. So we'll go through a series of questions where the spirits enlighten us with their knowledge. So on the first question, Kardec asks, in question 344, at what moment does the soul actually join the body? So when does it actually happen? And he says that the union begins at conception, but it is only complete at the moment of birth. From the moment of conception, the spirit designated to inhabit a given body is connected by a fluidic tie, which gets tighter and tighter up to the instant that the child is born. The newborn cries announce that it has entered the number of the living and the servants of God. So, and actually, I should mention this. We're all, as Anna mentioned, this is a conversation, if you will. So at every slide, I'll give us a couple minutes if you want to bring any questions, any comments, so we can make this a more dynamic conversation. So around this slide here, the main point I wanted to bring was the moment of conception. So at that moment of conception, and conception being when basically the sperm fertilizes the egg. So now the egg is fertilized, and from that moment on, it'll start to split and to become a human body. So in that moment, that's when this fluidic tie happens. So it's not to say that the soul is completely immersed in that body, because again, it's only one cell, but the tie is already connected. So that's when that happens. It's the moment of conception is when we get this tie. And then this connection, this tie will get tighter and tighter and tighter throughout the pregnancy of the mother. And then once the child is born, that's when it's fully connected. And so much so that the spirits, they tell us that the newborn's cries announce that it has entered the number of the living and the servants of God.
I just would like to mention, Victor, about the book of André Luis, where the missionaries of the light, or Missionários da Luz, where they talk about a reincarnation, the reincarnation of Sigismundo, and they described very well this process. It's so beautiful, and what is called my attention too much, like very much, and touched me very much in this answer is that we are counting on like as servants of God. It's so wonderful that we are here like servants of God. Right? And everybody has this opportunity, should have this opportunity.
In my research, I saw that even in this biological process that happens, even there is a spiritual influence, if I want to say, or a spiritual push for the exact sperm to be the one to be selected.
Oh,
there
yes.
is a spirit influence right there. So it's unbelievable how everything is so coordinated.
Oh, yes.
With even for both sides, for the egg from the women and for the sperm from the men, there is that spiritual guidance for that one to be the one to be the winner, or to be the one that will generate the baby.
Nothing is by chance.
Nothing is by chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so detailed.
And this could can also justify why some of the when a child is born with some difficulties, some like genetical problems or something, how would that sperm that technically could be considered weak because carry this genetic mal bad possibility, let's say that's not the best word, how it means that race, because it's not by chance, right? It's already planned.
Yeah. And that's what science can explain, because
Yes.
if you, it's not that science can't explain, it's just because science is still in the progress of recognizing the spiritual aspect to find the answer, is how can we explain that if there are millions of sperms, and then that only one sperm that at that point was the strongest one that got to the end, and that one has a tendency or generate some malfunction. How can that happen? Right? And then if we take into consideration the Spiritism, we know because there is a purpose and there is a program for that soul, for that immortal spirit to fulfill.
Great. Thank you, guys. This is really nice. It's good to do this. So I again, to keep going on the same line of thought, if we look at question 353, when the spirits ask, when Kardec asks, since the union of the spirit with its body is not complete and definitely consummated until after birth, can the fetus be considered as having a soul? Right, and this is a question very important because it can be translated as to what in science we think about when does the life start, right? And the spirits, they answer very succinctly and to the point. They say, the spirit who must animate that body exists outside of it, so to speak. Strictly speaking, the fetus has no soul, since the current incarnation is only in the process of being accomplished. Nevertheless, the fetus is linked to the soul that it will have. So again, it brings us to what we were just talking about. It's that tie, it's that connection that starts once the egg is fertilized, is what eventually will bring the soul fully to that child. But the fetus is linked to that soul from the beginning. And as we'll see on the next question, that body, that fertilized egg is for that soul and that soul only. But we'll see more about this. Did you guys have anything you wanted to say about this one?
I think I know that's not the topic of this workshop, but I believe there is a manual that says, and I think Alirio in his book that talks about family, but the reincarnation process, I think it completes when the child is up to completes the 7-year-old. It starts in the conception, right? Then I think the attachment solidifies with the birth, and then the reincarnation process as a bigger system is completed when the child completes 7 years. Just as a FYI.
It's in the same book too.
The same one, okay.
Yes, Miss Lardalos.
Okay.
I was just going to add, because we heard also that these kids who can still remember a little bit of their past lives usually happens before 7 years old, because they haven't completed the process of the new life yet. So it makes totally sense with all the years they match, right?
Nice, thank you. And this is something that we brought last year from Henzo. And just a bit of a timeline, sometimes it's easier to see something. So at the conception, that's when the link starts, and it starts to tighten up throughout pregnancy, throughout those 9 months, and then at birth, it's when it's fully tightened up. And then, as we talked about, the reincarnation process is still ongoing. And then, like we saw in the previous question, at birth is when the cry produced by that infant announces that it has entered the number of the living and the servants of God. And then the third and last question I'll bring about these specific, very detailed things about abortion is 345, that says, is the union between the spirit and the body definitive from the moment of conception? In other words, during the first stage, could the spirit refuse to inhabit the body that has been designated for it? So it's a very interesting question, asking whether or not the spirit can say yes and then say no during the pregnancy, and also if the spirit says no and it disconnects from that fetus, can somebody else kind of come in and take over? So the spirit's reply, saying that the union is definitive in the sense that no other spirit can replace the one who has been designated for that particular body. So this one answers the fact that that fetus is designated to one spirit and one spirit only. And then it goes to say, however, since the ties that bind it are very tenuous and easy to break, they may actually be severed by the will of a spirit who recoils from the child it has chosen. In that case, the child does not survive. So during this connection, which extends throughout pregnancy, the spirit himself or herself still have at times the free will to decide that it changed its mind. It actually doesn't want to incarnate or doesn't want to reincarnate. And at that moment, they can break that tie and recoil. And then that means that the child will not survive. So that's one of the reasons why the child does not survive the pregnancy. Any comments on this one? It's pretty straightforward and to the point, right? So now I want to shift gears a little bit, since we talked about what Spiritism brings to us about abortion, and specifically about the beginning of life, if you will. And I want to shift gears now and bring us to one of the main pillars that Spiritism brings to all of us, which is the law of reincarnation. Emmanuel brings to us in the book Divine Justice, chapter 33, he says that, and Spiritism emphasizes, to be born, to die, to be reborn yet again, and to progress continuously, that is the law. This is actually also encarved on Kardec's tombstone. It was later added to his tombstone because it truly summarizes in a very succinct way this progress that the law of reincarnation brings to us. To be born, to die, to be reborn yet again, and to progress continuously. That is the law. And reincarnation is such a strong pillar of Spiritism because it allows us to bring together two attributes of our spirit that before reincarnation might have been against each other, if you will. And I'm talking about our feeling and our thoughts. Before reincarnation, to try and live in a world where we might see a lot of injustice, our feeling would always bring us the idea that God is a loving God, so let's trust God, and there's probably a reason. But without the law of reincarnation, our thoughts wouldn't really be in line with our feelings. It was very tough for our thoughts to reason it out, to be able to reason out where is God's justice if we have so much disparity in the world. So the law of reincarnation allows us to bring our feelings and our thoughts together. They're no longer fighting, but now they're progressing, if you will, on the same notion, on the same journey. So now we have our feelings truly believing in God's justice, and also our thoughts telling us that, yes, that makes sense. And that allows us to improve and emphasize and solidify our faith in God, in God's justice. So much so that, as Anna already brought to us, in John chapter 3, we have Jesus talking with Nicodemus, and he says, very truly, I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they're born again. So again, Jesus there was referring to not only reincarnation, but also to the progress of seeing the kingdom of God and how those two are linked. Emmanuel, in the book Successive Lives, chapter 110, from The Way, the Truth, and Life, he comments on this specific passage, saying that the words from Jesus to Nicodemus was very clear. Reincarnation is a universal law. Without it, the world would be overwhelmed with disorder and injustice. So again, this law of reincarnation brings to us a wealth of peace, if you will, because we're able to make sense of the divine justice. And once we can make sense of it, we can put our feelings at ease, because we no longer have to hide it or look the other way, but now our thoughts and our feelings can both combined make us or strengthen our faith, if you will. Any comments on this one? Because now we'll start going through the law of reincarnation as shown to us by the Spirit's book, especially when he talks about birth. And starting with question 132, we have Kardec asking, what is the purpose of the incarnation of spirits? And it's interesting here because Kardec is asking about incarnation, not reincarnation. So what he's trying to achieve here is asking, what is the purpose of our material life? Why do we even have to come to Earth? Regardless of if it's 100 times, just the fact that we have to come. Why do we have to come? Right? And he says, and the spirits replied to us that God imposes incarnation for the purpose of leading spirits to perfection. So the purpose of incarnation is to lead spirits to perfection. It's very simple. And I want to reflect a little bit on the word impose, because it might seem a little harsh. And the analogy here that we can bring is about a vaccine, and because it's in everybody's minds these days. If you think about a small little kid, and the parents bring them to have a vaccine, to have a shot, and if you ask the kid, do you want to have this vaccine? And they are likely going to say no, because it hurts. All they can see is the pain from a vaccine. They can't understand yet that that vaccine will in turn be something that will be good for them. Eventually, it'll be something that it's good for them. The parents, knowing that it is good for them to take this vaccine, they will impose that the kid takes it. So we can bring this to this analogy for when God says, when the spirits tell us that God imposes incarnation upon us. A lot of times we might think it's painful, we might think we don't want to, but God knows that it is the best for us. And for the reason being, because it is for our own perfection. It is part of our own journey to perfection. And when we think about incarnation's purpose to be leading us to perfection, it kind of shifts the notion of an imposition from God, from something that we're obligated and we must do for it changes this notion of something that's an obligation, something that's harsh, to something that's an opportunity, and it's a necessity for us to be better. And he goes on to answer, and the spirits tell us that incarnation has a further objective, which is to place spirits in situations where they can do their share in the work of creation. And we could expand the work of creation into many different aspects, but since we're talking about abortion here, I wanted to bring this reflection. Incarnation, or being born, if you will, that allows us to do our share to the works of creation. Not only the mother, but also the child or the parents, right? Contributing to the work of creation through the birth of a child. Any comments?
I have one comment. It's funny when we hear, because we understand the purpose of reincarnation and the goal of God having all his all the spirits in the process of perfection. But I don't know why I thought about this right now, but I've heard some women sometimes say that they don't want to bring more kids to life because of how violent our planet is, or how come we're going to bring more kids to this world because it's insane. We have so many presidents that don't give them the chance, or something like that. So it's not an abortion per se, but and obviously we're not talking about those families, those parents who it's already in their program not to have kids, but sometimes people who want to have kids, but they're trying to avoid because they think of how the current planet is. And we know we live in a planet of trials and expiations. And it's funny, you get the reverse idea of what you have to do, right? Because the 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 plan is really the opposite. You have to bring more kids so they can change things, because we know those spirits maybe are coming with a purpose of helping to develop so many things in our countries, right? So it's interesting when we have this knowledge of what's the purpose of reincarnation and how things are developing. You understand way more why you have to have kids, right? And so when I talk about these women, when like, I'm not going to have more kids, I'm not going to bring more kids to this world because it's insane and blah blah blah, we're like, no, it's exactly the opposite. You have to bring so they can be a future for our lives, things can evolve. So yeah, it's interesting how and I'm so grateful to understand how things work, because imagine how many women are still thinking like that, right? So anyways, it was just a little bit off track, but one comment.
Thank you very much, Carol.
But it's also not just to have new children being born to help with the development of the world, but also as an opportunity for some of the spheres that are really needing this experience for their evolution. For some of them, we know that might be one of the last opportunities to incarnate on Earth yet. So it's also giving them this opportunity. But
yeah,
I know
both
it's
of them.
not.
There's so many spirits waiting for the opportunity, right, Anna?
Yeah.
I think there's
Certainly
also
not
an invitation for all of us to understand the providence of God, right? The faith and the foresight of God, the law of justice, charity, and love. God, with its attributes and perfection, will never bring and will never create those situations if he could not provide and have a foresight of everything that's needed for every single one of us in this world to make it better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to Carol's point, it was beautifully put, because it ties to this next question, 167, asking what's the purpose then of reincarnation, right? And it says expiation and humankind's progressive improvement. Without reincarnation, how could there be justice? So the first sentence there speaks to exactly what you said, Carol. It's about the humankind progressive improvement. It's not just that spirit that will have the opportunity to improve, but he'll contribute to the entire humankind. And that's how humankind progresses, right? It's through reincarnation. So thank you very much for the contribution. It fits really well with this question. Luis, how am I doing with my time?
8 more minutes.
Okay. I'm going to skip this question. And I'm going to go to something that Sonia brought. And
sorry, I didn't mean to be a spoiler.
absolutely not. It's just amazes me how in sync we are. So to illustrate a little bit more about reincarnation, I wanted to bring the case of Segismundo from the book Missionaries of Light from André Luis. And I don't want to take too much time to explain this, but it was basically when they're all incarnated, it was Segismundo and Adelino and Raquel. Those are the three, I guess, the triangle, if you will, where Adelino and Raquel, they were together, but Segismundo ended up killing Adelino so he could stay with Raquel. So that was the triangle, if you will. And the book describes everything that happened after Segismundo, actually after everybody passed, and he beautifully describes the journey from Segismundo to improve himself in this spiritual world after having committed an assassination. And it also describes how the other two, so Raquel and Adelino, they both reincarnated, and how Segismundo was waiting in the spiritual world, improving himself until the other two could get married, and then provide that opportunity for Segismundo to come back as their kid. And that's as much as I'm going to talk about the story, because it is beautiful, so I recommend you go and read it. But this idea, or this story, illustrates to us how much goes on in the background, how much work, how much planning, how much weight sometimes a spirit have to go through to have that opportunity to reincarnate. And a lot of times we beg to come back so we can fix the mistakes that we made. So this brings me to the reflection of why talk about reincarnation and abortion at the same time. Because the heart of the matter here, to me, when I was reflecting about this, is that a lot of times we are stuck around arguments or discussions or conversations about, when does life start? Is it at the beginning? Is it at birth? Is it at 4 months? Is it when the heart starts beating? But to me, the true heart of the matter is that when that link is formed, there lies an opportunity for reincarnation. There lies an opportunity for a divine law to be completed. There lies the ending, if you will, of a much bigger plan that we sometimes don't even know about. And for that opportunity to go through, for the divine law to be completed, and for us to be able to the purpose, not only of that child, but also the purpose of the parents. Because again, it's not just for the evolution of the child, is also for the evolution of the parents. And again, as we said, the evolution of the whole humankind. So that's why we brought reincarnation and abortion. It's because the birth, especially in that moment of the fertilized egg, that's where an opportunity of reincarnation is born, and this entire journey can continue. And that's anything you guys want to add?
I think in addition to that, Victor, is even what happened before just to get to that opportunity of reincarnation, right? All the planning, and we can see a lot in the books from the series from André Luis, there's so much preparation, there's so much work, there's so much involvement of spirits, and there's so much, I want to say, love involved in preparing, in make sure that the amends are in line to happen, right? So it's such a maybe I'll say the birth or the conception is such a big milestone for such a bigger plan for a system of spirits, because we know it's not only the baby, it's the parents, it's the family, and it's the world, right? So there's such an importance for us to, and I think that's one of the reasons, right, that we do this, so everybody or people can be aware of how important is their life, how important is that this plan is continued and the objectives are fulfilled.
Exactly. Thank you. The book Spiritist Ideal, chapter 53, entitled "At Home," Emmanuel brings us a lot of reflections about reincarnation, and I just want to focus on a couple points. I won't read the entire slide, but he basically says that nobody escapes the law of reincarnation. And then he brings us a lot of paragraphs talking about yesterday and today. So yesterday meaning the previous incarnation, and then today being the one that we are in right now. So in that third paragraph there, he says, yesterday we put pride and vanity in the chest of a brother who followed the less happy examples. Today, we share with him, like a despotic husband or a problem son, the bitter chalice of redemption. So in that last sentence there, he says, the bitter chalice of redemption, how reincarnation allows us for that redemption, allows us for us to redeem the things that we did in the past. And then lastly, on that last paragraph, brings a little bit about the family that I always love to talk about. He says, and whatever your obstacles in the family, it is necessary to recognize that all moral construction of the kingdom of God before the world begins on the invisible foundations of the struggle at home. And it's there, it's in that foundation that our progress starts. And a lot of times where we're trialed the most. But again, that was always planned, and we probably don't remember, but we wanted it because we know it's better for us. Even though it might be painful, it's truly what's best for us. Okay, and how am I doing with time now?
Your time is up. But
okay. I think I'm going to stop sharing then.
All right, I guess it's me now.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so after this, the law of reincarnation being beautifully described by Victor, we are going to talk a little bit about the law of cause and effect that comes to the place when we don't follow the divine laws, when we rebel against them, and when we decide to not accept the invitation to provide a new opportunity to that spirit that is linked to this pregnancy that we just started. So again, I just would like to emphasize what Anna said at the first beginning. We are not here to judge. We are here to bring awareness to bring consolation, to bring more tools, more instruments that help everybody that have passed through this situation, or maybe in the future when you will be seeing this presentation, probably you're going to be passing through a situation like that. So to be aware about what's the reason that we need to say no, and what's the consequence when we say no. So it's just to bring more awareness. And another point that I would like to bring is that Spiritism is in favor of life always. For these reasons that Victor brought to us, and because this is the only way that we can progress as immortal spirits, and because that's the objective of Spiritism as well, to clarify, to console, and to show us that we are time travelers here. And this existence is just a station. And as we had this opportunity, maybe we should consider to provide this to our fellows, brothers and sisters that are waiting their opportunity to come to join us. Even though it's a planet of trial and expiations, we are here to help each other. Is the law of fraternity, solidarity, that we are here to comply with, besides the law of reincarnation. All right, so without further ado, let's start. I just would like to bring other points, such as the objectives that I would like to show. Again, I'm having some problems with my present. Okay, there you go. The plan here is to talk a little bit about the differences between the divine laws and the human law. Also to talk about the cause and effect law, the possible consequences, and the repentance. And again, we are going to talk a lot about divine laws and the reasons why we stand up against aversion. So let's start with the book, the book 3 for the moral laws in the Spirit's book, that brings us the first question that is very important for us to understand both laws. First of all, what is natural law? And then the Spirit says, natural law is God's law. It alone ensures the happiness of human beings. It shows them what they should or should not do, and that they only suffer when they deviated from it. So what we can understand about this, I highlighted some words here to ensure that we be aware about them. God's law, it's here to provide happiness to us. And they show us what we should do or not to do. So they work as a guideline to us, a GPS, let us say. And we suffer from them. When we suffer in our life, it's because somehow we decide to take another direction, to not follow the way they are pointing to us. And sometimes we act like that because we are in a state of ignorance in 2 levels. Maybe we don't know, or maybe we don't feel. What I mean with that is sometimes we know about God's law, but we don't feel in our hearts. But sometimes we just don't know. And in a state that we are living in a situation that we don't find other way, we go to that direction. And that's the point that again, it's not about judgment, because sometimes there are some women, some very young teenagers that are living this situation and they don't see how to go through. They don't have the support from their families. They are in a situation that it's hard for them to decide. And the doctrine says that we have we made choices to be here, and we have planned our trials and our expiations. So we have all the Spirit's attention and help to go through this situation. But we know that sometimes it's not an easy decision, but that's the decision that lead us to the happiness. That's how we should act only. Anything, a comment about this point?
I think this is a great introduction to put in perspective the importance of God's law. And what happens is just, again, a consequence when the God's law are deviated, right?
Exactly. So as a consequence, we have suffering, we have pain, right? And if you want to be happy, that's the way that we should go. That's the invitation that we should accept. But then the question, in the answer, we see that it shows us what we should or should not do. So how do we know? How we are aware of this knowledge? So the question 621 from the Spirit's book explained to us, and we always bring in our lectures here the question 621 that says that God's law is written in our conscience. In everybody, this is another law, because God treats all his children equally. So all of us, we bring the divine laws in our conscience. Sometimes we understand, we have that knowledge that they are there, because when they're hesitating, if we should do this or should do that, sometimes we can hear a little voice telling us, hey, I guess you should do that. That's your duty. Even though it's not something that you want, it's not aligned with your will, but that's the right way to do. And when we listen to this voice, we are actually and when this voice is alerting us to practice some virtue, it's because we are acting aligned with the divine God, with the divine laws. But we also find these laws in the Jesus Gospel, in the doctrine of the spirits. All the books from Allan Kardec brings the divine laws. André Luis, the collection from André Luis, some other, Emmanuel, lots of literature, spiritist literature, bring us so many examples and explanations about the divine laws, that it's there for us. And then we should think, but the God's law, they can change sometimes. Can God recommend or preach something at one time and prohibit in another? And that's the biggest difference between the human law and the divine law. God does not make mistakes. People must reform their laws because they are imperfect, but God's laws are perfect. A harmony that regulates both the material and the moral universe is founded on laws God established for eternity. So then we should think that our laws are still imperfect. The human laws are imperfect because we are apprentices. We are here learning every day how to be better. This opportunity that God provides to us to be here, to be experiencing a new life, to every human being that is incarnated right now is a blessing chance to get better, to get closer to God, as the question 115 describes to us. That's our mission, right? As spiritual, as immortal spirits, to enlighten ourselves through the knowledge of the truth. And what is the truth? Is the God's law. And what they are supposed to, why they are created for our happiness. So it's just amazing how one question answers another and how rational they are, and how the material and the moral universe is founded on those laws. Can you imagine if the law of gravity changed over time? So today I am, my feet are on the ground, and tomorrow I am floating there. And that's what happens with our laws, human laws, because not long ago, 400 years ago, or maybe 200 years ago for other countries, the slavery was legal. And now it's not legal anymore. So we should rationally think about those points. Anybody would like to add anything?
I guess when we start thinking about wanting to rebel against the laws, just knowing the fact that they are perfect, that God doesn't make mistakes, that those laws are there for a reason, it makes us reflect upon our rebellion. Do I really want to rebel against something that's not going to change? So the invitation should be, maybe I should change myself, because that's something I can actually work with.
It's true.
So yeah, yeah. Thank you, Sonia.
No, very true. Thank you, Victor. It's really true.
Obedience and resignation, right?
Exactly. And just for one reason, our happiness, right? So that's the reason. But how about the abortion law? Does the Spiritism says anything specifically about it? Yeah. Question 358. Is voluntarily abortion a crime, regardless of the length of the pregnancy? Any transgression of God's laws is a crime. Taking the life of an unborn child, it's a crime, whatever committed by the mother or someone else, because the soul is prevented from experiencing the trials intended for the body that was destroyed. So let's reflect a little bit on this question and answer. So first of all, I'd like just to call out, and I underlined here, the word crime. So every word that we find in the gospel, which is that is related to punishment, crime, sins, punishment, we are invited to resignify them. Crime here, we could resignify for mistake, error. We are apprentices. God created us in a state of simplicity and ignorance, without knowledge. We are supposed to commit mistakes. Then that's the first point here in this question. The second is, as Victor told us, the spirit is in contact with the fetus. They are connected already. So when we cut that link, we are not giving that spirit the opportunity that we are having. We are preventing them to experience the trials or the journey that he had planned, as Luis has explained too. we planned ahead to become, to hear, to face all the challenges that will help us to be better. So when we do that, we are prevent someone else to experience this, their journey as well towards God. And that's what happens when in the countries like in Canada or in other countries where the abortion is discriminalized, because goes in an opposite direction of the divine laws. And the argument, the reason that they discriminalize abortion is because they say that it violates a woman's right to live, rights to liberty and security of person. We understand that, but how about the child? How about that spirit that is, since the conception, the life is presented? How about that person that is inside that body? It's not only the body, but there is another person there. That human being, we are prevent them to have access to the same rights. So that's the difference that we should think about it. And another thing that we should think about is the abortion is a transgression of God's law. But as humans, if we think in a materialistic way, and if we just see the human life, the human laws, we are not committing any crime, so there's no consequences. But how about the God's law? There is a consequence. Which are them? And that's what we are going to bring here. Anybody would like to, to talk a little bit more about this topic? Yes, it's a very important one.
Yeah, just a quick comment. When you're talking about all the women's rights and it's their body and etc. I think it's easy to go that way to try to justify if you don't see that fetus, that baby, as a life already. I think it comes from this understanding or this lack of understanding that when life starts, right? And a lot of times, I would say that people prefer to not have that knowledge because it's easier for them to just commit the act if you don't think that that's a life. Again, it's not a judgmental comment. It's just because we know that when we are in hardship, in situations that are not easy in our day-to-day, we tend to have these, masks that we wear and then, or try to find justification in it for our act. But, and with all of this propaganda that's saying, oh no, it's not life yet, and etc. So that's, again, it's easy to, like, if you don't know, because you don't look for that information or because you don't believe that, it's kind of easy to just like, oh, it's only the woman's rights. It's their body. It's their body, their choices, right? But it is a life already there.
Yes. And I just would like to mention that everything that we have here actually are loan. It's a loan provided by God. When we leave this dimension, we are not going to take our bodies with us. We're not going to take anything with us. So it's not ours, actually. It's just a blessing loan for us to experiencing our trials. And it's correct, Anna. Thank you very much. Sometimes we just see one side, but because it's more, it's easier to see only one side when we want to do something, right? But it's important to have all this knowledge in order to have a good discernment. Why? Because we have the free will. The same way that the human laws, they give us the right of freedom, God gives us the same law, the law of freedom. But the difference is exactly there. The freedom that this law gives the women that want the women that want to go to the direction of abortion. In God's law, the law of free will of God, there is consequences, and that's what we are wanting to shed some light here. Because the same question, but the 358. Sorry, guys, 358A. We have some ideas what's about the free will law. So does God not inflict trials and tribulations as punishment? And again, this punishment here we should see as only as consequence. And the answer is nothing happens without God's permission, because God has established all the laws that governs the universe. In giving a spirit the freedom of choice, God bestows, or God conceive or concede upon the spirit full responsibility for their actions and their consequences. Nothing blocks their future. Both the right and the wrong roads are open to them. So we have both roads open to us. We have the freedom to choose, but also aligned with this freedom to choose, we have the responsibility upon the acts the decisions that we made and the consequences of them, which is not the same as the human laws, because this is the law of cause and effect. And the law of cause and effect is not a punishment law. There's no such law in God's law. It just brings us back the acts that we performed. I like to use this analogy. If I have a ball and I threw this ball on the wall, the ball will come back to me. So every act that I do, everything that I do, doesn't matter if it's against or in favor of God's law, will come back to me. If I give love, I receive love back. If I give charity, the charity will find me back in some point of my life. So it's just a law. It's impartial in itself. So it's important for us to know that there is responsibility and consequences in everything that we do. And again, a failed test, if I have chosen this in the past, it's important to know everything that I have done, any transgression of God's law, doesn't matter if it's abortion or anything else. Every time that I act with pride or selfishness, I am acting against God's law. But we need to understand that it's intention that it's mostly looked here. When we are acting some ways, actually we are acting with a good intention. We have a good intention. Like women, they have a good intention to protect themselves. I don't feel prepared right now. I would rather wait a little bit more, or I don't wanna, they have somehow a reason, an intention, but the wrong direction, because they are against their own happiness. They are acting against the God's law that only is there to create, to provide happiness to us. And the message that I would like to leave here is that a failed test is not a failed life. Even though we have chosen we made some choices that were not good to us, we have always a new chance to redo what we have done poorly. Any comments? Should I go?
6 minutes, just a timer.
Thank you. I was about to ask you. Okay, so just like to bring the consequences now. So the 300 and possible consequences, actually, because depends on each of us, right? The level where we are, the intention, everything is God. He sees every thing that happens in our lives. It's not only about the act itself. So the possible consequences about that the Spiritism brings about abortion is that for the spirit perspective, the spirit that is trying to reincarnate, it's an existence that is new and must be commenced over again. It's like we have already talked about it. We have planned everything ahead. We have had that agreement before, but if it's not completed, we need to recommence over again. And this situation can bring possible physical and spiritual consequences not only to the mom, but also to everyone else that is involved in that process, and the partner, the health workers, everybody that is involved in that process. And just to name a few, we have many literatures that brings those processes as a consequences of abortion. The perceived process due to a feeling of guilt feeling, deficiencies in the reproductive system, sometimes problems to get pregnant or have some problems during the pregnancy, due to energy damage that we have caused in our spiritual body, because we're not just this body, we have a spiritual body which we damage when we go to this action, because it's a very violent act against ourselves. The obsession, spiritual obsession, when the spirit that was supposed to reincarnate and he doesn't accept the fact that he was that opportunity was denied. Sometimes he or she doesn't accept, and there is lots of bad energy, the vibrations of dissatisfaction and hate that can complicate our lives or the mom's lives a lot, and then can lead to the depressive process. And the afterlife consequences as well, because as I said at the beginning, we are just time travelers here. And when we come back to the spirit realm, we are gonna have all the consequences, like as Jesus said, to each one according which their work. So we're gonna have consequences waiting for us there too. And I guess the main one is look behind and say, what I have done, why I didn't comply with the God's law as I supposed to. And this is not punishment again. It's just the cause and effect that brings us every thing that we have done, all the consequences as a result of everything that we have done. And to finalize, I would like to talk about the repentance. And I would like to bring this short extract from the book Good News from Humberto de Campos. This is the meeting that Maria de Magdala had with Jesus. She came to him asking for forgiveness and asked to be his disciple, if there is any chance that she could recover or redeem of her mistakes. And what Jesus said to her is so beautiful, and it's true for all of us. And he says to her, have you ever seen spring give flowers over a ruined house? So the ruins are the human creatures, but the flowers are the hopes in God. Over all the failures and the misfortunes of men, the fatherly blessings of God come down and call. Today, you feel this new sun illuminating your destiny. Walk now under its light, for love covers the multitude of sins. So for those that are here, that are having access to this material, the sun is here illuminating our destiny, our heart, in order to be aware about this beautiful process that is reincarnation, that is a new opportunity, the right to live that everybody has. That's how I finalize my talk.
Right on time.
Thank you. I beat that your heads up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
I do have a
Go.
comment before, so I'm going to kind of mess up
No
the
worries.
time with it.
That's okay.
So when we're talking about the consequences, just to remind us that it's not just for the mom, the future mom that made the abortion, but everyone involved, right? So could be the father that didn't support, could be the doctors, everyone involved, depending on what is the participation, that the consequences of all of our actions come to ourselves depending on what we did. So in the case of abortion, just to remember that, because sometimes we talk a lot about the mom, and there is a reason why, that mom got pregnant, but she didn't get pregnant by herself. And sometimes, a lot of times, the situations in life may put other people in their journey too. As Sonia said, maybe a very young girl and doesn't have the support. So just remember the consequences, because sometimes it seems like, oh, it's about the mom and their choices, or the future mom, their choices. It's everyone involved that have the participation, also have the responsibilities and the consequences.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. So I hope everybody's seeing my screen. Yeah, awesome. So Sonia, it's such a great segue to talk about, as we've been talking about, what does Spiritism say, right? And now with this beautiful passage from Maria Magdalena, to talk a little bit more about the divine mercy. The divine mercy that is based on the law that everybody is equal. There's no more mercy for one than the other. The mercy is equal to every one of us. So like just to, again, explore a little bit more of what Sonia mentioned in question 358. which when the Spirit says a crime is always committed when the law of God is transgressed, and really draw the point into the word crime is very, it's heavy. It's in our society worldwide, not only in Canada or Brazil, it has a heavy connotation. But I think the doctrine and the gospel invites us to reflect that it is a mistake that has been made. That is clear. But who else here doesn't have mistakes, right? And if we go, even if we take the example of the adultery woman, when she was about to be stoned, and Jesus mentioned about who here doesn't have a sin, and he goes and tells her, so I will not judge you, so you go and you don't sin anymore, right? So it's important for us to understand the context of this word crime, the context that Sonia has mentioned now about the mistake that here we are talking about, this mistake that is transgressing a few of laws, divine laws, but I myself and all of us, we are transgressing maybe sometimes daily some of the divine laws. So we're all making mistakes. And another context that I think it's important to bring, and Kardec mentions in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 3, item 7, when he mentions that the earth as a planet of trial and expiations. The earth as it is a sordid district, a hospital, a penitentiary, an unhealthy region, because it is all, and this is all at once. So imagine we're all here in this situation and make mistakes because we are also imperfect spirits. That's not to say, I think it's important also to highlight, that's not to say that we should not care, right? We should not think about it. But it's important to understand what is the invitation for us. And it's an invitation that Jesus, in all his passages and throughout the Spiritism doctrine, for us to find this balance and acknowledge that we will have a life of mistakes. It's how we are in right now, right? And it's actually more dangerous that we don't, for whomever decides to not recognize those mistakes and not being aware. It's more dangerous not recognizing, not being aware of those mistakes. Because what happens if we're not aware and if we don't reflect on those mistakes, we are missing such a blessed opportunity for us to reflect and for us to repent and for us to repair. And if we don't take into consideration those three aspects, we're missing an entire opportunity of transformation. So I think that's just want to give a little bit of this context because I think it's so important. And as Anna mentioned, not only for the mom, but for the entire system that is spirit that might have been thinking about this possibility or had gone through this possibility. It's this opportunity for all the involved to stop and reflect. I just want to reinforce a little bit more about this point, about this word crime, and kind of change the connotation and the understanding more into the mistake and how we are all together here in this planet trying to make amends and making mistakes and learning. So, and you guys can interrupt me anytime if you want to add anything. So I just to bring a little bit more about, those are the three kind of stances or attitudes that the gospel and the Spiritism doctrine invite us, is on the reflection, being aware and reflecting of what we what we did in any of our mistakes, and is to learn. What have I learned on the thing that I did? What consequences that I faced? What are some of the struggles that I had? And what did that teach me? What can I do? What are the pieces that I am being invited to change? And after that reflection, how can I do it differently? How can I repair? How can I change? And I know that in this case of the abortion, where it's more intense, there are many other aspects involved, as guilt, as forgiveness. And I will try to cover a little bit about that later. But I think it's important for us to, once we know about the mistake, but what do I do with that mistake? What can I do to improve and make it better?
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
You mind? I was thinking that we can do this process as well, learning from others' mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And not only seeing what they have done and judging them. This is not the point. The point is reflecting about what people have done and what's the consequences and where we can find that in all the books that we commented here before. André Luis collection brings lots of examples that we could reflect upon and avoid those mistakes for the sake of our happiness. So we can learn from that too. We don't need to pass through. We can learn before act. So the invitation is that's the only point that I would like to bring up.
That's such an important point. There are so many examples that we can take, and maybe we can avoid that mistake, or maybe reduce the impact of that mistake. But there is another question that I found that was very interesting as well, is when you're making a mistake and we want to repair, who is that repairing related to? Is that repair related to someone else? Is that mistake related to someone else? But actually, as we know, as Sonia mentioned with question 621, because sometimes we might say, blame person A, blame person B. That's why I made that mistake. But in fact, the mistake is always related within ourselves. Everything starts within ourselves. And those mistakes are just a consequence, or the reason that led us to not following the divine law. And the repair will be to leave the divine law within ourselves. Actually, there's nothing external happening. Of course, there are actors that influence, but everything, the repetency, the learning, the reflecting, and the repairing, it's everything in our own conscious. And the invitation is for ourselves, whomever committed that mistake, to leave the divine laws within ourselves. So that's another important piece for us to reflect as well. Then I want to bring question 1000 from the Spirits book. And the question is a little bit longer, but I want to explore a few beats of it. And there's, I think, another one. Yeah. So can we redeem our faults in our present life? And the whole repairing thing, and especially in the case of abortion, might not be able to complete in just one existence, right? Because we are all in this process. We collected some mistakes, and God, with its divine mercy, can you imagine giving us, now you have your ultimatum, now you go and finish all of that. That will be against the law of justice. That will be against of the law of love and charity, right? So there is this whole process, but it's important that yes, there you can start doing some amends, and some of the mistakes and some of the wrongdoings can only be atoned, or let's say fixed, when we do something good. And the attempt, it's important that not only, oh, I just go and do something good, but the attempt of doing something good is that making an attempt at making amends are worthless. It won't get any good consequence if they affect neither one's pride and nor one's material interests. And to explore a little bit more about this question about doing the good and being sure that whatever whatever the mistake was, when I'm trying to repair, how am I trying to repair that? And if that repairing is really taking into consideration, not taking into consideration my material interests, and taking consideration how am I dealing with my pride. And in order to do that, I follow one psychologist when he mentions when in the abortion or any of the mistakes that we commit, there is this differentiation about the act of committing and the intention of committing. And as Sonia mentioned, so if we think about repairing and just repairing the act, if I just take a materialistic stance on it, I might just say, oh, in order to redeem this fault, I just have another baby. And I'll just do it. And then I just correct the mistake that I did. Or I might say, oh, I'm just going to force myself, even though I don't want to. I'm just going to force and do some sort of assistance. And because I'm assisting someone else, I can do some sort of a bargaining power of God. Because I did this, now I want my mistake to be fixed. So what the Spiritism and what Jesus and God's law invited us to reflect is, what was the intention that I did that? Something has happened for me, and I here I'm deliberately using the mistake, right? I know you're talking about abortion, but even in any mistake that we commit, what was the intention? Why did that happen? The reasons that mistake occurred. Maybe for a family or a mother in this case, it's just because that mother might not want to lose want to lose the body, or because it's going to damage the body. So that might be the reason of one of that abortion, or there is shame, or maybe because not able to take care of the child. There's so many reasons, but it's so important that we find what is that why that happened for us to make that mistake that caused us to go against the divine law, so we can really learn, I did that because of that X reason. Now I can reflect, why did I put that into priority? What can I learn that's not the right way to put that into priority? And if I'm going to repair, I know exactly the reason why I did that mistake, and I repair the root cause of that mistake, and not just taking a recipe or prescription for mistake A, you do X, Y, and Z. Every one of us, we are so unique, and we have our own history, our own pieces that we are invited to take such a careful look, so we don't lose that opportunity. We don't lose that opportunity to repair, and we don't lose that opportunity to grow as not as a human being, but as a spirit. So I thought that was a good distinction that helps us in all the mistakes that we make, so we can make the right amendments. And as the question before said, if I'm just making amendments from a materialistic perspective or to fulfill my pride, I'm unfortunately missing that opportunity. Some water.
Yes, I just would like to add, Luis, that it's so true what you're saying. We have sometimes ways to think or some beliefs that we bring in ourselves that sometimes it's not easy to understand ourselves. We, each of us is an universe. We are unique. And that's a great invitation for self-acknowledgement.
Yeah.
In order to understand ourselves and to go to the deep cause of our choices. And it's so beautiful, and it's so good, this journey, because you can see yourself through this journey, and you can really understand why sometimes we make decisions that sometimes it's just like that. We don't think, because actually we think, but it's so deep inside of us that we don't reach very easily.
Yeah.
And just to add to it's we are not, there's no cake recipe like you said, right?
Oh.
Because we are not cakes. So we need to do this work. We need to make efforts to know ourselves in order to understand the choices that we make, why we make those choices, really learn, reflect upon them, really learn in order to make better, because otherwise you're going to be repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I like the same person that said that the mistake is a key instrument for self-discovery, right? I think that's so consoling and so beautiful to see that when we make some mistakes, there are elements that Sonia just mentioned, our patterns, things that come from this life, from past lives, that is bring up to surface for us to embrace that with love and see what can I do to make the amendments and work on my transformation. And all of us are making mistakes, and we'll have different intentions. Sometimes everyone might go against divine laws because of a different reason. And I think that one of the reflections is, what have we done? What is the intention that led us to not follow God's law? I think that's a good question for us to think about and start this self-discovery journey and this transformation journey based on some of the mistakes that we have. The intentions might be because I'm overvaluing material things. My pride or my selfishness is still too much intense, and I'm having this opportunity with this mistake to correct and to make those amendments. So it's such an important piece that look at how good and the mercy of God giving us in this world that is in this trial, and gives this instrument that sometimes we say, I don't want to make any mistakes, but look at how important some of those mistakes, if we know how to use those mistakes, can be as the key to make us better and to keep us going on our evolution journey.
Our mistakes, Luis, they are as valuable as our right ones.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There is no difference. They are all there to show us that this is not the right way to go. Just come back. They are just pointing us.
Yes.
Go to another way.
Yeah. So we know that in order to do this process, sometimes in making those mistakes, there is a lot of guilt that comes, especially in the case of abortion, right? So I want to bring a little bit of our beloved Joana de Angelis when she talks about self-forgiveness in the book Law of Immutable Love. And she says that undiluted guilt tears the being whether consciously or not, imposing the need to repair the damage caused. For this reason, the forgiveness of the wrongdoing is of relevant importance. So it's such a key aspect for us to think about when facing our mistakes, because the guilt, sometimes we go into those streams. We want to be so perfect, and we keep thinking, why have I done that? Why haven't I thought about doing X and Y? Or I just don't care, right? So the balance here, and if a mistake is committed, is to think about not what could I have I done, or why didn't I have I done that, but to reflect on the learnings, and to reflect what did that situation is telling me, so I can avoid the mistake. Or if I'm seeing a mistake, and Sonia mentioned, what can I learn from others, right? What others have done to maybe to start the process of healing, to start the process of eliminating that guilt, to start the process of forgiving and understanding that, as Sonia mentioned, the sun is is shining for every one of us, right? And and all of us, we deserve the opportunity, and we will have the opportunity. We'll always have the opportunity. And it's interesting, looking at the consoler, if we take that that passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism, which we should forgive 70 times 7, right? So that's in the forgiveness part. But if we flip that question and thinking about 7, we can make 70 times 7 mistakes, right? If we flip, we will be, maybe there might be the case, and there will always have that forgiveness. So we can see that question and that maxim from Jesus in two sides, right? We of course we always aim to make it right, but when those mistakes happens, they are there for a reason, and they are there to guide us and to help us into continue in our journey. And I only have 4 minutes. Let's see here. So I just want to continue, because this is such a beautiful text, not only to those who attacked, accuse, or slander, but also and especially himself or herself. It is indispensable that the individual allow him or herself the right of error, considering, however, the duty of reparation. As we're saying here, we're not saying we don't care. We just invited to be aware and start working on the reparation side of it. Through whose effort, he overcomes the embarrassment that the conscience of the equivocation impose on him. This is not a permissive attitude to new mistakes, but a right of human being to achieve success or misfortune in their undertakings, learning through experimentation. So we're all apprentices of life, right? With our mistakes, we have a great invitation to deepen in ourselves and to deepen in our process of self-discovery and self-transformation. Absolutely. In the process of evolution, we will look back into those instances where the mistake happened. And there will be some pain, because we're still in this body. But as it happens, and as you progress over time, we will reflect. And as we compare our old selves with the new selves, if we take that attitude of transformation, we'll reflect on those experiences. And albeit they might be painful, they brought so many reflections, so many learnings, that today we can actually see the transformation, and we can express our gratitude towards God for that experience, because that experience made who we are, as a new human being that emerged, or will start emerging, will continue emerging as we evolve in our journey. And I just want to end with a passage that Yeah, it's such a beautiful passage from a book called After the Storm from Joana de Angelis. There's a chapter 12, and she talks about, and she entitles criminal abortion. And that's the abortion that is provoked, right? And she brings a beautiful piece when she starts talking about what happens in the case of pregnancy of women in the case of rape, and what happens in the divine mercy with the spiritual within the spirituality, how the divine mercy does not uh, uh, let that family or whomever is involved uh, without support. So I just want to read that to you because, and that's not even though she mentions about the case of rape, but I think this is for everyone that is might be in a difficult situation of pregnancy, that there is support and there is help, actually additional help from the spiritual world to help that family. So she starts, many times the spirit that arrives under such painful circumstances becomes a great blessing to the mother's agony and oppressed heart. The truth, however, is that the victim is expiating a debt and advancing on the trail of abnegation and sacrifice to the pinnacle of happiness. And this is the most beautiful part. Consider the liberating doors of reincarnation. Advance to higher levels of spiritual progress by offering the opportunity to spirits who seek your help and trust in God, the author of creation, who watches over the birds of the air and the flowers of the fields, will also watch over you, who are more valuable than they. You are not forsaken or deprived of divine assistance. So it's such a consoling and beautiful piece from Joana for everyone that is might be struggling and might be facing a challenge with this. The spiritual help never cease. The spiritual help, for more difficult that might be, we're all blessed and we're all protected. So there is an invitation for us to trust in God, to trust in spirituality, that we'll be able to go over. And even using an example of Divaldo, when she mentions this piece that many spirits arrives under such painful circumstances, becomes such a great blessing. And Divaldo, in a piece hearing from Alberto Almeida, he was the child number 12, I think. And when his mom got pregnant, there was, I believe, some sort of she should not having it because there's having one more. And what a blessing that we have this missionary helping in the spiritist movement, and how many other childs and kids that can be a bless to the family. So yeah, that's it that I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Luis. It was such a wonderful text. I was touched by the teachings from Joanna.
Yeah, I always get a little bit teared up because
Yes.
it's really beautiful.
Yes,
It really
reminds
touched my
me.
heart. Yeah.
Reminds me the teachings from Jesus. Just look at the birds and the lilies,
Yeah.
the providence, the divine
Yeah.
providence, right?
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Yeah. All right. Any some final thoughts?
Just to say thank you, guys, was very enlightening, very consoling, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Go to the ending now. Is that it?
Okay. Can you hear?
Yep.
Perfect. So we now invite everybody to pray. We've come to the end of a workshop around cherishing life. And it's now time for us to soak everything in. Elevating our thoughts to our guardian angels who are here with us. All the mentors that have helped us with the Cherishing Life workshops. The mentors of our dear house, FSS. Those mentors that lead us to our one and only Jesus, our brother, our enlightened brother that is always with us, that never forsakes us. On the contrary, always shows us the loving path, the path of righteousness, the path of repentance. In Him, in His path, leads us to our Father, to our Lord, to the one that is in everyone, to the one that not only created us, but also created us under loving, just, and charitable laws, bringing us all together. So in this time, we would like from the bottom of our hearts ask you, Father, to inspire us, every single one of us in this prayer, to instill within our hearts the feeling of love, the feeling of love that we all know how good it feels. Like a mother's hug, a father's hug. That feeling of love. We want to irradiate this out. This love, and together with the divine light, we ask that it surrounds all those spirits that were not given the chance at a time to incarnate because of an abortion. We ask that this light revolves around them, gives them support, and shows them that his parents simply made a mistake, and that the divine mercy is always there, giving them another chance. We would like to extend this love as well towards the fathers and the mothers who are right now thinking about undergoing an abortion. We ask, God, that your light shines upon their hearts, shines upon their conscience, illuminating that divine being that is in all of us, the divine being that knows the loss, that loves the loss. And we hope that this light reverberates their entire body, their entire soul, and help them make the best decision. And lastly, we ask that this love, this light, reaches the fathers and the mothers who have undergone an abortion. And we ask that this light reaches them in a way that they can feel that they are not the mistake that they made. They are much more than that. They are sons and daughters of God, that they are not forsaken. On the contrary, they are worthy of the loving, just, and charitable mercy that our Lord bestows upon every single one of his progeny. So may this love and light surround everybody, every single spirit who has been affected by abortion, bringing them the love, bringing them peace, that the divine laws are there for them to be better each and every day. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank the mentors of FSS. Thank our own guardian angels for allowing us to be here today in such a lovely afternoon, talking about Spiritism, talking about the gospel, talking about love. Thank you again, and may this moment always be remembered in our hearts. So be it.
So be it.
Yet.
So be it.
Good.
Very
Beautiful prayer,
good.
Victor. Thank you.
Yes.
Very beautiful.
Thank you. And it's 5 o'clock.
Wow.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you, Luis.
Wonderful.
We're gonna keep together.
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
can I just need to do go for a bio break.
Okay, sure. You'll call me later.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a great Sunday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you.